Hello everybody, this is Ariadne Rainbird and today I'm going to talk about Typhon, who is a kind of a monster in Greek mythology. Typhon, also spelt Typhaon or Typhos, is an entity who has captured the imagination over many centuries, from ancient Greece to the present day. He appears in popular culture, in artwork, stories, and even in Marvel comics as a chaotic, unpredictable, and destructive force who opposes the divine order of the Olympic gods. In ancient Greece, he was considered a force that was fierce, feared, and needed to be defeated and kept under control, though he could never be killed. Due to his powerful, chaotic nature and opposition to the status quo, he is popular today with Satanists, chaos magicians, and other left-hand path occultists. Typhon is known as the father of all monsters in Greek mythology, and he's a terrible force to be reckoned with. He's generally depicted with a serpentine lower body and the upper body of a man, and with wings, though ancient Greek descriptions of him would be very hard to actually depict in art, with his immense size, many heads, flashing eyes, and serpent fingers. So here are a couple of modern images of him which have tried to capture how he is described in ancient Greek descriptions. Typhon is a daemon who brings cataclysmic change, and he's connected with natural disasters such as earthquakes, volcanoes, and hurricanes. In fact, typhoons are named after Typhon. Typhoons are generally stronger than hurricanes, moving faster and with more substantial wind speeds and a stronger intensity, and therefore can potentially cause more damage and loss of human life. So you can see how destructive and dangerous a deity or demon or whatever you'd consider Typhon to be, how destructive he can be. The earliest surviving references to Typhon is in Homer's Iliad, which was written between the 8th and 7th century BCE. And Homer mentions Typhon just very briefly in Iliad 2, 780 to 785, as having been defeated by Zeus. Zeus is described as striking the ground where Typhon lies defeated. And the Iliad says, "And the earth groaned beneath them, as beneath Zeus, who hurled the thunderbolt in his wrath, when he scourged the land about Typhaeus, in the country of the Arimi, where men say is the couch of Typhos." Typhon also appears in ancient Greek art, in pottery of the 6th century BCE. He's depicted on ancient Greek vase paintings, such as the Chalcidian Hydra, as Chalcidian Hydra, as a winged figure with the upper body of a man and two coiled snakes instead of legs. So you can see a couple of images of him here from a black figure pottery piece. There are various stories as to the parentage of Typhon. Hesiod, who was writing between 750 and 650 BCE, approximately, tells us that Typhon is the son of Gaia, the earth, and Tartarus, the primordial god of the dark and stormy abyss beneath the earth, a place of punishment where the Titans were imprisoned after the Titanomachy, that is, the war of the Olympian gods with the Titans when they rose up against Zeus. One might expect that the offspring of such dark forces or such dark origins may be a fearsome creature and a force to be reckoned with, a deep chthonic power. Hesiod says that Typhon is terrible, outrageous, and lawless. He is immensely powerful and has 100 snake heads which emit fire and every kind of noise. The Homeric hymn to Apollon tells us that Typhon was a child of Hera alone, when in jealousy of Zeus giving birth to Athena without her, but from his own head, Hera asked Gaia, Uranus, and the Titans to help her to produce a son without Zeus, a son who would be stronger than Zeus. Hera struck the earth with her hand, and Gaia fulfilled her prayer, and thus Typhon was conceived. Hera gave birth to the monstrous serpentine creature in the Korykian cave in Cilicia in Asia Minor, and gave him the Delphic python to rear. Typhon grew up to be a terrible monster and a bane to mankind. The hymn describes Typhon as fell and cruel, and says that he is not like either gods or men. A possibly Orphic tradition, scholia, that is marginal and interlinear notes made to the text, notes to Iliad 2:783, says that Typhon was the offspring of Kronos. Gaia was angry at the destruction of the giants after the giantochemy and went to Hera and slandered Zeus to her. Hera then went to Kronos, who is the Titan father of Hera and Zeus, and who was king of the gods before Zeus overthrew him, and created a new order ruled by the Zeus and the Olympian gods. Kronos gives Hera 2 eggs, which he had smeared with his own semen, and instructed Hera to bury them deep in the earth. He told her that from one of the eggs would be born a being who would overthrow Zeus. Hera, who was angry at Zeus, did as Cronus bade her to, and Typhon eventually emerged. However, by that time, Hera had made up with Zeus. They were always fighting and making up in the myths, and so warned him about the coming of Typhon. Now, Pindar is another writer who mentions Typhon. He's a lyric poet of the 6th century BCE, and he wrote poems which describe Typhon as having 50 or 100 heads. 3 of his poems describe him with 100 heads, whilst one describes him with 50 heads. Apollodorus, who was a 2nd century BCE poet, describes Typhon as surpassing all of Gaia's offspring in size and strength. He is a giant winged monster whose head brushes the stars. His hands reach to the far reaches of the east and west, and from his hands project 100 dragons' heads. Nonnus of Panopolis, an epic Greek poet of the Roman imperial era in 5th century CE, in his work, the Dionysiaca, describes Typhon as having a tangled army of snakes for hair and being a poison-spitting viper. His hair belching poison into the mountains, and his serpent feet crawling into the caverns of the earth, spitting poison into the earth. Nonnus says that Typhon has many heads, including various animal heads, the heads of leopards, lions, bulls, boars, bears, cattle, wolves, and dogs. All these wild beasts cry together, making a cacophony of noise. Nonnus says that Typhon has innumerable arms and 200 hands. Typhon is described as having 100 fearsome serpent heads, with eyes that flashed fire and black flickering tongues. These 100 heads each made a different sound, producing a cacophony of sounds ranging from the bellowing of a bull to the whining of puppies, the baying of hounds, the roaring of a lion, and the hissing of serpents, as well as various divine voices. Typhon was said to be taller than all the mountains, and his head touched the stars. He had vast wings coming from his torso. His outstretched arms reached the limits of east and west, and out of his hands, instead of fingers, grew serpents. His lower body also was a mass of coiling serpents, and flames shot from his many mouths. In archaic art, however, Typhon is depicted as a winged figure with a human head and torso, and a serpentine lower body consisting either of one or two serpents, such as this image on this Corinthian alabastrum from the 6th century BCE. Other myths tell how Typhon and Python mated and together produced monstrous offspring such as the echidna. Obviously not this cute little thing that's here. The echidna was another monstrous creature in Greek mythology. But interestingly, the echidna, the male echidna animal, whilst not having many heads, its penis actually has 4 heads. But Hesiod, in his Theogony, tells us that Typhon was joined in love with Echidna and bore him fierce offspring. Echidna in Greek mythology is a monstrous she-dragon with the head and breasts of a woman and lower body of a coiling serpent. She may have represented the corruptions of the earth, such as fetid waters, rot, slime, decay, and disease. Her parentage varies according to different authors, and she is referred to as a daughter of Phorcys, the old man of the sea, by Pherecydes of Athens, who was writing in the 5th century BCE. And she's also referred to as the daughter of the Oceanid Styx, goddess of the river Styx, and a certain Pyrrhus by Pausanias who says this. And she's also referred to as a daughter of Tartarus and Gaia by Apollodorus. In an Orphic account, she was the daughter of Anis, the primeval deity who hatched from the Orphic egg at the beginning of the unfolding of the cosmos. She is described as having the head of a beautiful woman and a serpent's body from the neck down. Hesiod describes Echidna as a fierce, flesh-eating monster who was irresistible, half nymph, with glancing eyes and fair cheeks, and half awful serpent with speckled skin. She is unlike gods or mortal men, and does not die or grow old. Aristophanes, writing in the late 5th century BCE, gives Echidna 100 heads, similar to Typhon, whereas Nonius describes Echidna as hideous, with horrible poison. And here we have a couple of images of Echidna, one from ancient art and one modern, one from a black figure Lekithos, and the other from a modern sculpture, well, not so modern, 1555, but not ancient, Renaissance, a Renaissance sculpture from Italy. The offspring of Typhon and Echidna include Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who guards the underworld, Orthos, another monstrous dog, the Sphinx, the Hydra, the Chimera, the Gorgons, and Ledon, the dragon who twines around the tree that bears the golden apples in the Hesperides. Some of the offspring of Typhon and Echidna have functions as guardians, suggesting that they're not all bad, though, however terrifying they may be. Hesiod, in his Theogony, describes the Typhonomachy, a mighty battle between Zeus and Typhon, which follows on from the Titanomachy, the battle between the Olympians and the Titans. After Zeus has defeated the Titans, and before he has distributed honours to the gods who have assisted him in the battle, Typhon arises as his next and final challenger. These battles can be seen as Zeus ordering the cosmos and defeating the forces of disorder and chaos, with Typhon being that persistent, chaotic force who stands against perfect order, which Zeus attempts to bring about. Typhon's chaotic nature is further emphasised by the cacophony of sounds he makes. Typhon's voices include just about every type of voice in the cosmos and include the divine voices associated with the Muses. But whereas the Muses are intermediary deities who communicate the language of the gods to humans, Typhon's voices are incomprehensible, a chaotic cacophony of noise which is sharply in contrast to the harmony of the spheres and to the clear and beautiful voices of the Muses. If allowed to persist, this would lead to total chaos, a mass of undifferentiated sound, and the impossibility of communication between the gods and men. The many voices of Typhon, all calling at once, in a terrible and unharmonious cacophony, are symbolic of the original and undifferentiated state of the cosmos, before the separation of the created worlds, which Zeus had begun to order, and the individual goddesses and gods, with different domains and functions, who Zeus later gave discrete functions and time, or honours. Zeus's defeat of Typhon also involves sound. Zeus arriving with a powerful thunderclap, which reverberates across the cosmos, through earth, sky, sea, and underworld. A single sound which surpasses the mass of indistinguishable noises which Typhon produces. Whereas Typhon's voices echo through the tall mountains, Zeus's thunder penetrates the far reaches of the cosmos, and as it reverberates across the different realms, it reorders them as part of the unified whole ruled by Zeus. Hesiod describes how Zeus then set Typhon on fire with his thunderbolts, and the whole world shook, including Tartarus itself. Zeus then flung Typhon into the depths of Tartarus, where the Titans were imprisoned. From there, Typhon became the origin of all the violent and dangerous winds that cause men harm, the word typhoon being derived from his name. Typhon, although defeated, continues to persist as a force of chaos and disorder, a reminder of the destructive chaos which would be unleashed without Zeus's ordering power. Due to Typhon's continued power and influence upon the world, despite being flung into Tartarus, Zeus places Mount Etna on top of him to keep him down. From there, he continues to pour forth his anger in streams of fire, thus creating a volcano, still posing a threat to the world. His forces also persist in the wild and destructive winds, which are named after him, the typhoon. Other myths of Typhon tell of his great power that terrified the gods, such that they flew from him, taking refuge in Egypt. The 2nd century CE writer, Greek writer Antoninus Liberalis, wrote in his Metamorphosis how during their great struggle with Typhon, the other gods fled in terror to Egypt, where they assumed the shapes of animals in order to escape Typhon. Thus, Artemis became a cat, becoming the Egyptian goddess Bas, or Bastet. Apollon became a hawk and turned into Horus, and Hermes became an ibis, turning into Thoth. The Greeks also identified Typhon with the Egyptian god Set, the chaotic god who slew and dismembered Osiris. Some sources even say that Zeus also fled and transformed himself into a ram, thus becoming Amun, and accounting for the Alexandrian period cult of Zeus Amun, who was sometimes depicted in the shape of a ram, or as in this image, having the horns of a ram. Although largely seen as a terrible force of destruction, which needs to be kept in check, Typhon appears frequently in ancient Greek art, and later in amulets and spells. The Papyri Greek Magic, or Greek Magical Papyri, also just referred to as the PGM, a collection of magical spells and rituals from the Alexandrian period, include an invocation to Typhon in PGM 4, lines 154 to 285. This invocation appears to be part of a magical initiation rite, which gives the practitioner the spiritual authority to call forth into visible appearance the gods as well as the spirits of the dead. The practitioner states that he is attaching himself to Helios. He is also, however, instructed to crown himself with dark ivy, perhaps a reference to Dionysos, a god who is associated with the mysteries, initiation, and the dismemberment of the self in order to make way for the new. The candidate is instructed to wrap himself like a corpse for this symbolic death and resurrection. Barbarous words or voces magicae are used within the invocation, dividing it into 4 sections. O mighty Typhon, ruler of the realm, above and master, god of gods, O Lord, and then you've got a barbarous word, Aberamenthou. O dark's disturber, thunder's bringer, whirlwind, night flasher, breather forth of hot and cold. Shaker of rocks, wall trembler, boiler of the waves, disturber of the sea's great depth. Eo erbert au tai meni. I am he who searched with you the whole world, and found great Osiris, whom I brought you chained. I am he who joined you in war with the gods, but others say against the gods. I am he who closed heaven's double gates, and put to sleep the serpent which must not be seen, who stopped the seas, the streams, the river currents, wherever you rule this realm. And as your soldier, I've been conquered by the gods. I've been thrown face down because of empty wrath. Raise up your friend, I beg you, I implore. Throw me not on the ground, O Lord of gods. Ai minei barothera thorabe nimia. O grant me power, I beg, and give to me this favour, so that whensoever I tell one of the gods to come, he is seen coming swiftly to me in answer to my chants. In the first section, Typhon is called by name and is called the ruler of the realms. Other translations translate this as scepter bearer or staff bearing, which suggests some kind of spiritual authority. The only other deity given this epithet within the PGM is Apollon. Typhon is also referred to as Theon, the god of gods. Here, in the PGM, Typhon appears to be treated with the authority and power of the demiurgic gods, the creators, literally craftsmen, whilst still remaining a manifestation of the primordial chaotic forces of the cosmos. Typhon is given a number of epithets, including disturber of the dark, boiler of the waters, earthquaker, lightning flasher of the night. Some of the epithets of Typhon are similar to those of Poseidon or Poseidon, who, however, does not appear in the PGM. The practitioner then aligns himself with Set and becomes a vessel for Typhon's power. The invocation then states that they are allied with the gods, others say against the gods, and hints that Set's role has been much misunderstood and that his murder of Osiris was necessary in order to bring fertility to the Nile and to ensure human progress. Both Typhon and Set represent fundamental, chaotic, destructive, but also creative forces that are essential in order for the cosmos and nature to continue and evolve. Typhon is a force of movement that breaks us out of stagnation. As Set must defeat the apex serpent each day in order to ensure the continued motion of the sea and the cycles of the cosmos, Typhon also ensures the continued motion of nature and the cosmos, and by identifying himself with Set, Typhon, the practitioner attaches himself to Helios. As Typhon was cast down by Zeus and Set by Horus, the practitioner is one who is cast down, and petitions Typhon to raise him up again. This can be seen as a spiritual awakening and rebirth, an initiation that empowers him to meet face to face with the gods. Thus, Typhon is a terrible serpent, a force to be reckoned with, but also a powerful divine being, the god of gods. He is variously portrayed as a demon who threatens the gods and the order of the cosmos, that must be defeated by Zeus, and as a source of great initiatory power. Whether he is seen as a terrible demon or a great god, his origin as a son of either Gaia or of Hera is divine, and as such, he is worthy of respect. Typhon continued to capture the imagination of artists in the Renaissance. In this image by Wenceslas Holler, he is depicted with harpies either side of him, which are Typhon's offspring according to some of the myths. The second image on the right is from Kircher's Oedipus Aegypticus. Kircher was a 17th century Egyptologist from Italy. He produced 3 volumes full of ornate designs and used Chaldean astrology, Hebrew Kabbalah, Greek mythology, Pythagorean mathematics, Arabian alchemy, and Latin philology as sources, so he was quite eclectic and syncretic. He attempted to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs using as a primary source the Bembine tablet, which is a bronze and silver tablet, probably of Roman origin, depicting various Egyptian gods and goddesses with Isis at the centre and with hieroglyphs engraved. Typhon also appears in popular culture, in comics such as Marvel and anime and gaming. In the Marvel comics, he is associated with Hercules or Heracles and is the humanoid son of Tartarus and Gaia and the brother of Delphine. He fathered monstrous children with Echidna. After battling with Zeus, he was buried alive beneath Mount Etna by Zeus. Intent on revenge, Typhon battled Zeus again and managed to imprison him. Zeus was rescued by Hermes and defeated Typhon and exiled him to Tartarus, where the wicked are punished. So that's the Marvel. In modern times, Typhon has been observing Heracles' actions on Earth. Again, this is still the Marvel version. Typhon had somehow escaped and invaded Olympus and journeyed to the Temple of the Promethean Flame, where he destroyed the flame with his axe, thereby sending the Olympians into darkness in the land of shades, whilst the power of the flame goes into Typhon's axe. Hercules comes to Mount Olympus to find his father and meets Typhon, who tells him what has become of his father. The two fight, and Typhon sends Tartara over after Hercules. Hercules kills Tartaro, but Typhon casts Hercules into the land of shades and sets about to conquer the earth. Typhon spots an earth vessel and attacks it, which ends up attracting the Avengers, as Hercules returns with help from Zeus. And then it just gets silly. So I'm not going to go any more into that, if it wasn't silly enough to start with. Typhonian tradition, or Typhonian OTO, a self-initiatory magical order founded by Kenneth Grant, is also a modern manifestation of the honouring of Typhon. So Kenneth Grant was an English ceremonial magician and an apprentice of Aleister Crowley and a friend of Austin Osman Spare, who was known as the grandfather of chaos magic. He published many exegeses of Crowley's and Spare's works. Grant's work was influential upon the Thelemic tradition as well as on chaos magic. He was a member of the OTO, the Order Templi Orientis, or Order of Oriental Templars, which is an occult organisation and initiatic order founded at the beginning of the 20th century. And it remains to the present day a significant esoteric order which includes left-hand path practices such as sex magic. Grant is the founder of the so-called Typhonian OTO, later known as Typhonian tradition, whose first official announcement was published around 1973. Grant was a member of the OTO and had received in the early 1950s a charter formed to create a lodge in England, and following Crowley's death was seen as his heir apparent. However, a conflict arose between another member, Germer, and Grant, and Germer expelled Grant from the order. Grant then claimed the position of outer head of the order for himself. In the early 1970s, Grant began his career as an independent writer and published the first volumes of a series of 3 Typhonian trilogies, in which he offered an original interpretation of Crowley's writings, partly based upon his direct experiences in the workings of his lodge. Grant's work is rooted in the Thelemic tradition, even though traditionalists within the movements perceive his work as unorthodox and idiosyncratic. Grant shared several of Crowley's beliefs, including the upcoming transitions from the old order to the new, marked by violent upheaval. You can see where Typhon comes in here. His OTO was different from the Caliphate OTO, which is more orthodox. Grant has included several elements previously absent in OTO traditions, such as knowledge derived from communications with extraterrestrial entities, employed as a means to claim his authority, and also renewed emphasis on Eastern doctrines, Tantrism in particular, as well as from literary themes, particularly the Cthulhu mythology of H.P. Lovecraft. Grant is also quite influential in chaos magic, a close friend of one of the theoretical founding fathers of this tradition, Austin Osman Spare. Grant offered his own interpretation of Spare and maintained that Spare's main magical formula was that of atavistic resurgence and seek primordial levels of human consciousness. Consequently, Grant saw the spiritual journey as moving somewhat downwards or inwards through the tree of life, instead of moving upwards, as it is thought by most ceremonial traditions, including the Golden Dawn. Spiritual and magical evolution is in this sense fostered by exploration of an understanding of the chthonic levels of the psyche, the underworld of the human mind. This is why much of his work is concerned with demonic forces inhabiting the Qliphoth, the Sephira which exist on the flip side of the tree of life. Grant believed that these powerful forces carry the potential to radically transform the magician's consciousness and propel it into a state which lies beyond both being and non-being. Grant sees this process as highly dangerous, even though the inhabitants of the tunnels of Set are not perceived as evil forces. The reason why we may perceive them as such is that they are foreign to everyday human consciousness. By embracing the demonic as an idea, the alien otherness, the self and other divide is collapsed, and the magician is projected into the undifferentiated continuum of cosmic consciousness, and ultimately toward an evolution into new extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional modes of being. These ideas influence widely the countercultural discourses that gave rise and theoretical practical inspiration to chaos magic. Although a prayer to Typhon follows, he's not a god that you can expect to a reply from or any direct or clear communication. For by his very nature, he is chaos, his many voices an incomprehensible cacophony. Here's the chaotic forces within us and without, which must be kept in check, but from which comes great power. He is the God who is thrown down, but from which comes power which is ever bubbling beneath the surface. So whenever he is thrown down, his power is still always bubbling up. He is the shadow which contains great energy and creative power. He is the wrath of the gods, the destructive forces within the earth bringing great cataclysms, which formed the world as we know it, shows the forces of chaos, of destruction, but also creation. He is a force which, unleashed, can bring great terror and destruction, whose chaos threatens the order of the gods, and who cannot be destroyed, even by mighty Zeus. He keeps us on our toes, a reminder of the sheer, terrifying force of unbridled and explosive chaos, which must be tempered by reason and will, and the watchful effort needed to contain it. But from the tension between order and chaos comes creation. So I'm now going to recite my own prayer to Typhon. And on the screen here are some barbarous words which are recited at the end of the prayer, which can be recited as a kind of a mantra if you wanted to perform a Typhon ritual. But I would warn, be very careful when working with such chaotic and powerful forces. So, to Typhon. Many-formed Typhon, thou who art cast down, and who rises again, you of 1,000 voices, crying out in awesome cacophony, sender of storms and violent winds, thunderer and lightning flasher, causing ripples through the darkness, exhaler of extremes of cold and heat, stirring the depths of the earth and seas into violent motion. Mountain shaker, earthquaker, you who causes the oceans to boil. Primordial, volatile, creative and destructive power, whose essential force ensures the continual motion of the cosmos, of nature, of man. We honour you, O terrible power, and make offerings to you, who continually stirs all into violent motion. O fearsome God, we give thanks to you, for we know that the true enemy of nature, the cosmos, the gods and man, is the stagnation of stasis. And only by cataclysmic change do we grow. Help us, O terrible serpent, Lord, to rise again, when we, like you, are thrown to the ground. Inspire us with your awesome power, and may we be awakened into divine knowledge. Io erbe tau tau imeni. Io erbe tau tau imeni. Io erbe tau tau imeni. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation about Typhon and that you found it interesting and maybe learned something from it. If you did like this video, please like it and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I would love to hear your comments.